The archaeological expedition had been Marcus Chen's dream for 15 years. The cave system on Kepler 442b had remained sealed since humanity's first survey teams discovered it half a millennium ago. 500 years of bureaucratic red tape, territorial disputes, and simple fear had kept it locked away. Now finally Marcus stood at its entrance with his team, their helmet lights cutting through the ancient darkness. The Velkari ruins were legendary. The alien civilization had vanished 3,000 years before humans even left Earth, leaving behind only whispers in stone and metal. Every xenoarchaeologist in the galaxy wanted to be the first to unlock their secrets. Marcus was determined to be that person. "Atmospheric readings are stable," reported Sarah Kim, his second-in-command. "Whatever sealed this place did a remarkable job. The air inside is still breathable, no decay, no contamination." Marcus nodded, his heart pounding with anticipation. The cave walls were smooth, almost polished, covered in the flowing script of the Velkari language. His translation AI hummed softly, struggling to interpret the warnings etched into stone. They descended deeper. The cave opened into a vast chamber, and Marcus gasped. In the center, suspended on a pedestal of crystalline material, hung a sword. Not floating, not held by any visible mechanism, just hanging there as if gravity itself had forgotten it existed. The blade was beautiful. Obsidian dark metal traced with veins of crimson light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The craftsmanship was beyond anything Marcus had seen in 20 years of studying Velkari artifacts. It was art, it was power. It was impossible. "Sir, the readings—" Sarah's voice carried a note of concern. "That sword is generating heat. After 500 years of being sealed, it's reading at 37 degrees Celsius. Human body temperature." The thought sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. His hand reached out before his brain could stop him. The moment his fingers touched the hilt, warmth spread through his glove, up his arm, into his chest. It felt alive. It felt hungry. "You shouldn't have touched it." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Dark, ancient, amused. Marcus tried to let go. His hand wouldn't obey. The sword's crimson veins brightened, and suddenly he wasn't in the cave anymore. He stood in a star system he didn't recognize. Ships, millions of them, burned in the void. The Velkari Empire at war with something vast and terrible. Entities made of shadow and hunger devouring entire worlds. The Velkari fought with weapons that bent reality, but they were losing, always losing. Then he saw the sword being forged, not in fire but in sacrifice. 1,000 Velkari warriors gave themselves to the blade, their essence, their souls, their fury bound into the metal. A weapon to kill gods, a weapon to end the hunger that consumed galaxies. It worked. The dark entities fell. The universe was saved, but the sword remained, hungry, waiting. "We sealed it here," the voice continued, and Marcus realized it was speaking in his mind. "We sealed it with our last strength. We knew other species would rise. We hoped they would be wise enough to leave it alone." Marcus was back in the cave, still gripping the sword. His team surrounded him, weapons drawn, shouting his name. He couldn't hear them over the roaring in his ears. "Let go," he commanded himself. Human stubbornness, the trait that had carried his species from stone tools to starships, surged within him. "I said let go." The sword laughed. "Your species is fascinating. So young, so fragile. Yet you command yourselves with such certainty." "I am not your tool," Marcus growled. Every muscle in his body strained. Sweat poured down his face. The sword had consumed the essence of 1,000 warriors. What was one human against that? Everything. One human was everything. Because humans were the species that looked at impossible odds and said, "Watch me." They were the species that had clawed their way up from the evolutionary mud, that had survived ice ages and plagues, that had split the atom and crossed the stars. They were the species too stubborn to know when they were beaten. Marcus thought of his daughter back on Earth, 7 years old, with his eyes and her mother's determination. He thought of the homework help he'd promised over quantum comm, the birthday he'd miss, the future he'd sworn to protect. "No," he said simply, and he let go. The sword clattered to the ground, its crimson light dimming. Marcus collapsed, Sarah catching him as he fell. The dark voice screamed in fury and disbelief. "Impossible!" The Velkari couldn't resist. Their champions couldn't break free. Marcus smiled through his exhaustion. "That's the difference between your species and mine. You don't say no to gods. We've been doing it since we learned to speak." The sword lay on the ground, inert now, its power broken by something it hadn't accounted for. Human willpower, human spite, the sheer bloody-minded refusal to be controlled that had defined humanity since the first human looked at a predator twice their size and decided to fight anyway. Sarah helped Marcus to his feet. "Sir, what just happened?" Marcus looked at the sword, then at his team, then at the warnings on the walls he could now read perfectly, the Velkari knowledge still echoing in his mind. "We just learned something important," he said. "The Velkari were powerful. They were ancient. They were wise. But they never learned the most important lesson in the universe." "What's that?" Sarah asked. Marcus grinned, that distinctly human expression of defiant joy. "Never underestimate a species too stupid to know when they're outmatched. We've been punching above our weight class since the beginning. Why stop now?" They left the sword in the cave. Marcus sealed the entrance personally, adding a human warning to the Velkari script. "Dangerous. We touched it. We survived. Don't test your luck. Humanity indeed."